am the music god. This is the Noise Report. You know what we do here? We laugh, we have fun, we interview cool and interesting people. Pretty much anybody I can con into coming on this shit show that I call a podcast. um, it's kind of a cool honor to have this gentleman. He does something that I've been a fan of for a while, and it's gotten bigger and bigger. And I've never gotten to actually attend it, but hopefully one year things will work out. This is Chris. He is one of the founders, the organizers, the brain trust, if you will, of the Rock N Pod Expo that happens down in Nashville. It's a huge thing, and we're going to talk all about it. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely, man. I guess start by introducing yourself and giving a little bit of information about you and your background and
Mm.
uh, what led to you uh putting yourself through the stress of what you must go through to organize this every year.
Stress? No. No, there's definitely some stress involved, but no, the spiel basically is I've been a music podcaster since 2011, so this will be my 12th year. I do a
Nice.
show called Decibel Geek, and just love doing it. And over the years, the thing with podcasting, you talk to other podcasters, and you get on each other's shows, and
Right.
we'd have all these great discussions, and then I'd be like, well, I can't go grab a beer with you, so because you're like 600 miles away.
Right.
One of my friends, BJ Cramp, who also hosts a podcast, Rock and Roll, said, we should do some sort of a meetup. And then we kind of got to talking. And then it was like, well, if we do it, we should, like Nashville's a good music town. So by default, because I live here, I become the
Right.
organizer. Um, so at the time, it was just going to be a meetup. And it was like, well, how do we pay for it? And back then we said, well, we'll crowdfund it and listeners can donate. And it's like, well, if listeners are going to donate, then they should be able to come too. And if they're going to come, then they should be able to do more than just look at a bunch of podcasters talk to each other. So I've been fortunate to interview a lot of the rock guys from the '80s that live out here now over the
Yeah.
years. So I just started calling in favors. And I'm like, would you come to something like this and
Right.
do interviews, meet fans, sign records, all that stuff? And a lot of them said yes, surprisingly. And then vinyl was starting to take off at that time too.
Nice.
So I was like, well, I'll get some vinyl vendors on board. And it just organically became a convention. That wasn't really the initial intent. So
Right.
um, and then the first year went so great that everyone just kept coming. It wasn't a giant crowd, but the ones that came had so much fun that they were like,
Mhm.
we have to do this again next year. And then I'm like, well, okay, let's try it again. Did it again the same way in a little bit bigger space. And at that point, I started having some of the artists that were doing me favors were coming up and thanking me for bringing them to it. And I'm like,
Right.
well, why? And they're like, well, because we get good exposure on these podcasts and
Mhm.
mainstream media doesn't give us this type of coverage. So that was kind of the light bulb moment. It's like, okay, maybe we actually have something here. And it's just grown ever since then.
Yeah, I mean, I've never, like I said, I've never got to attend. I had tickets for one year. The ex lost her mind, decided she wanted a divorce like 2 weeks beforehand.
Hey, it's not my fault.
No, 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 by no means. But it just kind of happened that the one year that I did buy, I could afford the tickets to go and everything. She just went, off the reservation on us, so to speak. And
Right.
I ended up not being able to attend. And I've watched this every year just grow and kind of get bigger and better. And the idea is so awesome because it is really a bunch of, I guess, individual ideas that by themselves maybe aren't won't stand alone. But when you put
Mm,
them together, the comedy with the concerts, with the
right.
podcasting, with the different things,
Yeah. And
it
it's
really is a unique thing.
yeah, it's grown into that because it was just the expo initially. I mean, the expo we still consider the centerpiece of the whole thing because
Right.
it's where all the business gets done, but also it's a lot of fun and it's a win-win for podcasters, for artists, for fans, because everybody gets something out of it. Um, and then making it grow bigger with a bigger guest list is always a big deal. But also, it's the most podcasts we've ever had that are coming out to this thing, and it's like we've got like over 40 different shows from across the globe. We even have somebody coming from England this time, so
Wow.
it's really it's kind of just become. I don't know if you remember, like there used to be a thing in LA called Foundations Forum back in
Yes.
the late 80s, early 90s,
Concrete
and
foundation.
actually, yeah, and Bob Chaparty, who runs that company, lives here, and he's one of our guests this year. And
Yeah.
like I've
I
told Bob,
noticed
I was
that.
like, I said, what you did with Foundations was a big
Yeah.
inspiration for this, because he did that for the rock and metal industry.
Yeah.
I do this for that too, but mostly for the podcast side of things, to try to build up the music podcasting side. And we have my network, Pantheon Podcast Network, is the title sponsor for this one, and over 80 shows on their network, and it's just and making big waves in the business world too, as far as getting more exposure for these shows. And
Right.
but yeah, it's just, it's I'm not going to get all kumbaya, but it's all more just another way to try to turn people onto these great shows, because
Yeah.
everybody's complaining there's no good music out there, or Eddie
Yeah.
Trunk's the only guy talking music. I'm like, no, there's hundreds of people that are doing it and doing it just as well. So it's there, and this hopefully turns people on to that.
I won't get into Eddie because Eddie and I have had run-ins, and I am banned from anything related to Eddie Trunk because um, him and I got into a tiff over when Great White and Jack Russell split up, and
Oh,
he made a comment, and then I came back with what I said, and he was taking Jack's side, and I was taking the band side, and he was like, "Well, you're wrong. You don't know nothing." Blah blah blah. And I was like, "Okay, well, why should the guy who has written two songs in the entire catalog get the rights to the stuff
mm,
instead of the guys who actually wrote 98% of the material? I mean, that doesn't make any sense." And then he was like, "Well, Jack was in the band before those guys." And I was like, Jack was in Dante Black. He
or
wasn't in
Dante Fox, right?
or Dante Fox. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was like, he wasn't in Great White before Mark and those guys, and it doesn't matter what band he was in beforehand. The legal basis is Mark and, Lardy
Mm,
have basically written 98% of the catalog for the band. So
yeah.
that in and of itself, I mean, it was like Bobby trying to get the Rat catalog, and it was
Yeah, that
kind of
was
like,
stupid.
it was
Yeah.
like, and it was so petty. Like I was just like, whatever. But I ended up getting banned off of all
Well,
of Eddie's stuff, and it is what it is. Like I don't care one way or another.
yeah,
But
but I mean, friendship will affect your bias on certain things. So, and I think that that's the case with him in a lot of those situations.
it might be because I was kind of friends with Michael's fiance at the time, so I think that's maybe why I took Michael's
Yeah,
side in it.
you want to side with
Um,
your friends, of course.
but
And
it was still
yeah.
even without the friendship, it just
No, I get your argument.
in
I do.
the legal basis of it, it's like Queensryche. I get why
Right.
Jeff got Operation Mindcrime and why the guys got the rest of the catalog because songwriting wise, that's the way it felt, and that's the way it should be. Like, look, give credit where credit is due. But
Well,
back to this Rock and Pod thing. I'm glad to see Bob on there for sure because Bob is a huge influence for me. I lived and died in the 90s and whatnot by Concrete Foundation, the
mm,
magazines they put out, the little used to go to Warehouse Records and get those little cassettes, the
yeah.
samplers that they put out. And so many of my favorite bands now I would have never known about without walking in to buy something else. Oh, there, yeah, grab that,
Mhm.
and it's so surreal to me, kind of even now because turning 52 this year, I have gotten to interview people who, as a teenager, I laid on my bed and I stared at posters of who I wanted to be. I
Right.
wanted to be Steve Souza of Exodus. I wanted to be Bruce Kulick. I wanted to be Ron Keel, and I've gotten to interview those guys and become friends with them. And it's surreal to me to think, like, holy shit, I talk to Ron Keel all the time.
Hmm.
And I would have never dreamed at 16 years old
No.
that some weird avenue would open up that I could become friends with, you
Yeah,
know.
and I think it also is a testament to how cool rock and roll people are, because it's
Yeah,
like if you don't ever hear about anybody else that, even if they don't host a podcast, you never hear about them say, "Oh, me and Tiffany or Debbie Gibson are like tight now." It's like that never happens. But with the rock guys, they're more
right.
than happy to talk to the fans, and because
Yeah,
we're all just down to earth people. And really, through doing Rock and Pod, and I've worked with a lot of guests, I
yeah,
could count on less than three fingers how many like prima donnas I've had. I mean,
yeah.
all other than that, everyone's been great and just comes and has a great time.
Yeah, I've rarely come across any. Like the only two that I really ever came across, there was a Swedish band. They were new that Dave sent to me, ironically, and they had attended the singer's wedding the night before, so they were just like loaded, toasted, and they got on and they just wanted to talk about getting drunk and how much they partied and blah blah blah. And I couldn't get them to talk about the music at all. And after about 10 minutes, I just gave up and I was like, all right, I'm not gonna waste your time. You're wasting mine. I didn't bring you on here to talk about why you got drunk last night, like um the other one was Johnny Winters. And
Oh,
Johnny,
really?
Johnny just, I don't know, like everything he answered was one word. Yes,
Oh,
no,
those are the
yes,
worst.
no, yes, no. And I could not get him to elaborate. And after about 10 minutes, I was just like, all right, cool, we'll wrap this up because it
Yeah.
was clear that he had little to no interest in doing this interview. And
Yeah.
I understand it. Like I'm a nobody. I'm not Rolling Stone. So
Yeah, but it shouldn't matter.
oh, I know, and
Yeah.
I agree, but at the same time, I just kind of was like, "What? It's Johnny Winters, dude.
Yeah.
Like, he has earned the right to act any kind of way he wants."
Have you ever interviewed Doyle von Frankenstein?
No,
There's so many amazing stories of interviews gone wrong with Doyle, because he hates doing interviews. He despises it. And some PR guy sets him up for him, and he just gives one word answers. And like I've had
yeah,
at least three of my real good friends that are podcasters just have horrible circumstances trying to
no, I've
interview him.
never.
Yeah,
Um,
nothing they tried worked. It
no,
just
I got great stories for a lot of the ones. Zitro when um was so weird getting that interview because one of my friends is from Nashville, Charlie Bonnet the third.
Oh, I
Um,
know him. I've known him since
yeah,
the Disarray
CB3.
days. Yeah,
I was actually interviewing him when he was in Moccasin Creek.
I knew him when he was in Disarray when I was in high
Yeah,
school.
so I was interviewing Charlie for Moccasin Creek, and when I finished the interview, he's like, "Hey, do you listen to Exodus?" And I was like, "Of course." He goes, "Do you want to interview Zitro? Because he's got a new band with his sons." And I was like, "Yeah, Hatred." He
Mhm.
goes, "Do you want to interview him?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to, but there's no way." He's like, "Well, I manage the band," and I was like, "Bullshit." And he was like, "No, dude, seriously." And I was like, "Whatever." So I went. I was like, "Whatever. If you can make it happen, I'll be here. Just have him call me." So I went into the kitchen and I started making pizza for the kids. And the phone rings and I pick it up and he's like, "Hey, is this CJ?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Hey, this is Nitro." And I'm like, holy shit. Like, I didn't even know what to fucking say because like I have idolized this guy so long and everything about him, his lyrical approach, his vocal approach, everything I've done musically as a musician has been based on him.
Oh, wow.
And we started talking and we talked for 3.5 hours
Yeah,
just about
he's known to tell a story or two.
everything. And I was like, it was I was sitting there and my mind couldn't wrap around the fact that Mitch Malloy was another one. Like I
Hmm.
have loved Mitch for so long, everything that Mitch has done. And it never dawned on me to even ask to interview Mitch because Mitch is always so busy with everything.
Right.
And again, just out of the blue, somebody, one of his managers emailed me, "Hey, do you want to interview Mitch Malloy?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'd love to." And he let me do it after I put my kid to sleep. And then he was an hour late. So I was sure like Mitch wasn't going to show up. And then he finally did. And again, we talked for 2 hours. And I think it kind of freaked Mitch out because I know so much about his career because, again, I've idolized him for so long that I was telling, I was kind of fanboying, I mean,
Right.
Mitch was kind of like, okay. I always make the joke about Mitch about, hiding the fountain of youth in his basement because Mitch looks like
Yeah.
he hasn't aged a fucking day in 40 years
Yeah.
or 30
He
years,
was he was living here in Nashville for a while,
Yeah.
and yeah, I ran into him at a couple of shows, and he was gonna come the second year to Rock and Pod, but he got a gig and had to go out of town.
Yeah.
And then by the next time I was gonna get around to inviting him, he had already moved. I think he's living in Florida now.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. He does the Van Halen,
Yeah, yeah.
Mitch Malloy Van Halen thing. And kind of shocking how good he is with that. Like he's so good at everything he does. And
Mm.
it's none of the two things he does is ever alike. That's the weird thing. Like he'll go from
Right.
Van Halen to Great White to Mitch Malloy, and none of them really sound alike, but he's just good at it. And it's like, you suck. But some of the people that you have this show, for those of you listening, the website is Nashville Rock N Pod Expo.com. And we're just gonna throw out a few names. You have Eric Martin, Stevie Rochelle, who is amazing, Jason McMaster, Eddie Ojeda, Don Jameson, Craig Gass, Ron. Uh, kind of talk about that. Keel, Ron is doing the Keel Fest in conjunction with it, right?
Yeah, so Ron has been to a couple of them of Rockin' Pods in the past,
Yeah.
and we've unofficially titled him the mayor of Rockin' Pod because he's
Nice.
sort of he sort of holds court whenever he comes, and he's always great to work with. And then
Yeah, I love
I
Ron.
when I announced that we were going to do it in the spring this time, because usually it's an August event, it's like the way to close out the summer, but I took 2022 off because my kid was graduating high school, and I was like, I gotta do
Nice.
the family thing for a while. And then I was like, but I don't want to make everybody wait till August of 2023. So I was like, let's try it in the spring this time and see how it goes. And when he heard about that, I was just going to bring him on as a regular guest. And then he's like, I've been thinking about doing Keel Fest too. And we were looking at Vegas. He's like, but now this makes sense to do it in Nashville. And he's been such a good supporter of mine since I started this. And he's in both worlds. He's in the rock world, he's in the podcasting world, and he just believes in the vision I have for it. And he's an inspiring guy. He just,
Yeah.
if Ron's on your side, then you've got a good friend. And
Yes.
we've just all worked really hard to make this thing a success, and he's got a hell of a lineup in place for it. So yeah, I'm that's going to be a huge highlight for the weekend, is that show. I don't know how he's going to sing through that whole show though. He's going to sing for like 3-4 hours. It's crazy.
Yeah. And one of the most genuine guys, like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things I learned working with him is he never blows smoke up your ass. He never tells you he'll do something that he doesn't do. Like Ron is just a very down to earth, genuine guy. And if he can't do something, he'll tell you straight up that he can't do it. And I I love that about him. Like like I love the fact that he has the fifth as part of his label now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love Roy. Even
Yeah.
though Roy and I politically disagree on everything.
No, I'm not touching that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we laugh about it because it's just one of them things where we're kind of like we agree to disagree, because I'm a person, truthfully, like I don't let politics get in it. Like, hey, you're free to be over here or over here, and I'm gonna be your friend because
Yeah,
I'm never
I
gonna
don't
let
give a crap
politics
who
ruin a
people.
friendship.
Yeah, I don't care who people vote for. I really don't.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
look at it this way, and this is me pretty easily. I can disagree with someone politically, and if I let that be the sole deciding factor, if I'm friends with that person, then I might be missing out on us liking the same music, the same books, the same movies, the same sports teams. There are
Sure.
so many things that we can sit and have fun with. Why miss out on that just because you voted this and I voted that? Like that doesn't make sense to me.
I
And
agree.
it's just one of them things that it's cool. Like whatever. It's um you have Rick Fox, who long associated with Steeler and them guys. You have all of the Keel guys.
Yeah.
Mitch Perry, Anthony Fox, who you guys may remember from a number of things, including Wayne's World, maybe.
Yeah. Also, the drummer in the Alice Cooper Poison video. A lot of people don't
Yeah.
realize that.
Um, we have a bunch of new people as well that I'm noticing on here that are really amazing. Brett Carlisle, who just took over in Great White. You have Martin Motnick, who I think is newer with Accept, right? Like he hasn't been with Accept for very long.
Yeah. Last
Um,
couple records.
yeah, you have the Fifth, you have Crashing Wayward, which is another new band that Ron just signed. Um, you have Tuck Smith, uh, who is an absolute riot as a person. And poor Tuck, I wish he would figure stuff out because that guy seems like he gets a little bit of momentum and it just something happens and derails him.
Oh
And,
yeah. Oh,
you
I
know,
I was a huge fan of the Biters, and
yeah,
the Biters should be playing arenas if you ask
yeah.
me. Yeah, they
And
were
then you know that
that
somehow got derailed, and then he had something that other second thing, and that kind of
yeah.
got derailed, and now he has this, and
Yeah, and the
hopefully
last
this is
record's amazing.
all of them are like Tuck
Yeah.
is just an amazing. Tuck kind of reminds me, and I know I'm going to catch hell for this because he hates this comparison, but if Butch Walker would have stayed with the South Gang sound,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of reminds me of what Tuck is doing. Like if Butch
That's an
would have just
interesting
stuck
way.
with
Yeah.
that sound.
Yeah, I can hear that. I love a lot of Butch stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Butch even doing what he does
Oh
because
yeah,
Butch
me
is
too.
just a God. Butch is another one who's so disgustingly freaking talented. Like
Yeah.
it should be illegal to be that great.
Well, it's his songwriting,
Yeah,
especially, and
but that's
like
what I'm saying. Like whether it's
yeah, well, and like, or I can't name off the album. Like, the Spade is one of the albums he put
yeah,
out, which I got into a kick listening to that like nonstop. And I'm riding around with my wife one day. My wife is just a radio listener. She doesn't really go deep into songs. And I'm
nice,
playing this album, and it's one great song after another. She's like, "Who the
yes,
hell is this?" I was like, "It's
yeah,
Butch Walker." She's like, "I've never heard this on the radio." I'm like, "And that's a freaking crime."
yeah.
It's like he should be a huge star.
That's the thing with Butch. Whether he's writing for Pink, whether he's doing his acoustic stuff, whether he's doing his solo stuff, whether he's with the Marvelous Three, whether it was South Gang, whether it was Floyd's Funk Revival. I mean, everything the guy has written has been just disgustingly good. And it's like, he just fucking any genre he wants, he just kind of does it. And that's awesome. Like, I love that because I'm that way. Like, I listen to punk and metal and country and hip hop and blues and reggae. And I love people that kind of think outside of the box. And, um, hey, if three chords work for you, ACDC, awesome.
Oh, nothing wrong with that either. But yeah,
Exactly.
I
I
mean, hell,
love the Airborne. The
yeah,
Wild are one of my favorite new bands.
yeah. There's one called the New Roses. Have you heard them?
Yes,
Like,
they
that
were
was
they
my
were
album of the
number two
year.
on my list
Yeah,
last
that
year.
that was my number one for the year, and then Tuck was number two.
Yeah, I had Tuck at number three. I had New Roses at number two, and I had Skid Row at number one.
Oh wow, you really like that Skid Row one. I
I
liked it.
I'm a huge fan of Eric, and after Eric went through the leukemia thing and still sounded as good as he did on that record, I thought that was such
Yeah,
a feat. Like, look, this kid just come out of the other side of something that damn near killed him.
yeah. It's
And
definitely the
those
best thing
songs
they.
were,
Yeah, it's the best thing they've done since Slave to the Grind, I think.
yeah. And to
Yeah,
me, it almost comes off as what should have naturally followed that. Like
yeah.
it almost Slave Part Two, and that's kind of what I described it as. Um, so I'm glad that they're happy, and I'm glad that they're doing what they're doing. And I love Sebastian. Don't get me wrong. I've had a lot of good times with Sebastian. I've met Sebastian half a dozen times. He's always been a very stand up guy. Even though you hear horror stories about him from some
I
people,
I
but
I could tell you one too.
yeah,
He's not a
I've
fan of me, but yeah, I like him
I've
as a performer.
um I have had numerous run-ins with Sebastian, and they've always been comical and funny.
Mhm.
Uh, very organic, not planned, but he's always been a very nice guy, and I've never had no issues with him. But I'm also of the mind that look, I get that those guys don't want to get back with Sebastian. Like sometimes money isn't worth
No,
your
they would have
emotional
done.
well-being, and if
Yeah.
they're happy doing what they're doing, God bless them. Like like look, it's been 30 years since he's been gone. Get over it. Like, I mean, move on. Like,
Yeah, no, they would have done it by now if it was ever going to happen. And
right.
I think they're just happier not working with him, and he seems to do okay without him, so everybody's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I
Um,
just wish interviews would stop bringing it up to the guys because it's they're so sick of talking about it.
and that's the thing. Like, that's to me, couple of names you have on here that I really love. You have Rick from Every Mother's Nightmare, who
He's a
is
character.
just one of my favorite bands. Um, Every Mother's Nightmare and Tora Tora were both bands that I adored so much. And you have Anthony from Tora Tora,
Yeah,
which is kind of cool. And you have Roxy Blue.
yeah.
Um,
I love all those Memphis bands. I grew up listening to them.
yeah, it just there were so many awesome bands from that era.
Mm,
And the thing that I'm kind of known for, everybody loves the big bands, but I loved the bands that were never quite as big. I love the
totally.
Spread Eagles. I love the Shark Islands, the Sea Hags, the Mouths.
Yep.
Those are my favorite bands. Like I loved a band that was kind of an underdog. They were scrappy and um, it just Junkyard is another band that I
Mm.
still love those guys.
Dirty
But
looks. Yeah.
yeah, those are the bands that I loved, and I'm so happy to see a lot of those bands still kind of punching it out and still surviving and still doing their thing. And some of them are making a comeback. Some of them have been around the whole time. Um,
Mm,
Warrior Soul, for
yeah.
example. Uh, I love Corey. Corey is a complete and total fucking psychopath, but
Oh
I
yeah.
love Corey. you know,
But a hell of a poet too.
yeah, like Corey is the epitome of rock and roll. Like
Yeah.
when you hear when you hear the whole, crossing the finish line with the car on fire, screaming, "Holy shit, what a ride!" Like that's Corey. Like the guy just lives balls out all the time, and I love that. Like that he's never stopped performing music, whether it was Space Age Playboys or whether it was the whole legal issues with that and all of that shit. Like the guy has just continued to do it, even though he's probably not making any money or very little money doing it because,
Probably not much. Yeah.
yeah, so Corey's doing it just for the art of doing it at this point,
Oh
and
yeah.
I love that. Like, um, so tell us more about this. Like, tell us, I guess, ticket wise, um, what are the different kind of ticket package things? What are the
Yeah.
um,
So there's a lot of different
yeah,
options on this. So um basically like what I'll give you the rundown of the weekend. So Friday is the Rare Hair pre-party concert, which will have performances by Jason McMaster, Stevie Rochelle, Eric Martin. A lot of the guests are going to hop up and do a cover or two. Maybe not even by their own band. Just we letting
right,
them pick what they want to sing. I
right.
know Eric's doing some Mr. Big stuff, but I think Jason's doing like an AC/DC song or something. But that'll be Friday night. That's always a blast. That's St. Patrick's Day too, so there'll be a lot of drinking going on that show. And then Saturday morning, all day is the Rock and Pod Expo at the fairgrounds, and then Saturday night is Keel Fest too, which is at Bowie's downtown. It's just a 5 minute drive from the fairgrounds. Is really close to downtown.
Mhm.
And then Sunday we've got the Kiss Exposed movie screening with the comedians doing commentary, and then the comedy show that night with the Eric Martin concert, and Eric Martin will do comedy too. So
Nice.
basically, how there's each each event is like a separately ticketed thing, but we do have some bundle stuff. There's also a pop culture and comic convention going on Sunday in the same room at the fairgrounds. So you can do a Saturday Sunday combo ticket for the fairgrounds alone and go to Rock and Pod and the comic and pop culture show. There's also a Saturday combo ticket for the expo and Keel Fest you can get. Basically get you in half off at the expo. And then Sunday there's a few VIPs left for that comedy show and Eric Martin concert, but not there's like 3 left. And then so but general admission still available. But there's and then we're down to like our lowest VIP tier. The other 2 VIP tiers sold out already. So, but if you go to
That's awesome.
rockinpod.com, it's got all the different options and links for all the event. But no event is more than like $30. So it's like it's a everything is very reasonably priced.
And I love that. I love the ticket tiers, even for the podcasters, like the platinum package, the top
Yeah.
package, like $200, which is
Yeah.
so much below
Oh yeah,
anything.
we're
Like
yeah.
some of these festivals are just so insanely expensive now when you start getting into the upper tier packages with the benefits and stuff. And I'm like
Yeah.
$200 and I want to go so bad and just everything. And I swear I'm gonna get there because I want to be a part of this, man. And I've had so many great adventures with a lot of the people that you have as part of this. So
Oh,
uh,
cool.
I really look forward to again taking part with this and all of that. There's one other one. Oh, where'd it go? Um, I think I lost it. um, Bob Berryhill. You have Bob Berryhill. Blah. How did he kind of come into the mix? Because you know, he's kind of from a completely different generation than the majority of
Uh,
these.
yeah, and we try to expand it every year as long as anything that falls under the banner of rock or rock and roll,
Right.
I'm cool with. And he kind of came by way of Eric Martin actually, because
Okay.
his manager, Eric's manager, and her husband is Eric's drummer, and then they've done some sort of work with Bob, and Bob lives here in Nashville, and I
Okay.
think they're helping him out with some PR and stuff. And this year is the 60th anniversary of Wipeout, so
Mm,
he's wanting to kind of celebrate that. So they're like, "Do you want
nice.
Bob Berryhill from the Surfaris? He's local." I'm like, "Yeah, of course, why not?" I mean, it's
Yeah.
I don't mind expanding things a little bit each year. We've got voiceover people this time. There's comic and pop culture people that are involved this time. We try to expand it every year. You gotta grow or it won't grow with you.
Yeah. And I love that. Like I love that, I guess, idea of it expanding beyond, like I love the core idea, but I love the fact that it is open to more than just that
Mhm.
because there's so many great new bands that are coming out that maybe don't fit into, I guess, the hard rock genre or the, I don't know, like the 80s or the hair metal or the hair bands or whatever terminology, wrong
Yeah,
or right, that you might want to use for these bands. Um, there's newer bands even that I think would benefit greatly.
yeah.
And I
We
know
also
that,
have we've got like 12 different independent bands that signed up to have table
yeah,
space. So and they'll be there, turning on people to their music and show, passing out CDs and stuff. So
that,
it's that it's grown in that respect too. Our independent musician crowd gets bigger every year. It makes
that's
sense because it's
awesome.
Nashville though.
Well, hopefully by next year I'll be able to maybe even toss my hand into that because I'm working on my first solo CD. So
Right on.
we'll see how that works out because um the idea for the CD I'm recording is so schizophrenic that I'm people are like seeing what I'm doing and they're like, dude, what are you doing? And I'm like, did you expect anything less? I literally listened to Slayer, Charlie Daniels, and Blue October in the same sitting. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
now I want to hear this. Yeah, I got to hear this.
but I mean, that's the thing. Like, they say write what you know,
Yeah.
and I grew up on a 400-acre farm with a grandfather who listened to Hank Sr. and Fair and Young. I had a dad who's in his 52nd year as a truck driver who was Boston and Bob Seger and Bad Company. I got into trouble at 12. They sent me to my mom's house, which was 2 blocks off of Sunset Strip in 1983. So I
Oh
was
wow.
thrust headfirst into, early Shark Island, Hollywood Rose, all of those bands.
That's awesome. You were there for that.
Yeah. So, I had that. And then I come back to Michigan and hardcore punk had just kicked in. So I got into, the Dead Kennedys and the Circle Jerks and, those bands, Naked Ray Gun. So I've got like all of this music that I grew up on and I've been influenced by. So these songs have this schizophrenic style of where I'm kind of coming from, like this song idea is punk, this one's hard rock, this one's hip hop, this one's kind of country and metal. And people are like, you can't put all that together. And I'm like, why?
Ah, sure you can.
Yeah, like, why? Why can't I? Like, Queen did it.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, Queen didn't put hip hop and, punk together. And I was like, Queen put fucking Broadway and hard rock together. Like, what's more extreme than that? Like, Freddie sang opera on one song and then did Stone Cold Crazy. Like, come on. Like,
Yeah.
like, I'm not saying I'm Freddie Mercury because I'm nowhere near that, but
No, but at least it's authentic.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, is again, like I said, I love thinking outside the box, and I kind of want to shock people. I kind of want to just challenge their perception of what music is and what it can be.
Well, I
So
want a copy when you get it done.
yeah, absolutely. Like, like I almost this is the horrible thing to say because this is the reference that probably 85% of people aren't going to get. But I almost want to do what Lord Tracy did on Deaf Gods of Babylon, where it was just literally, or what Scatterbrain did Down with the Ship.
Yeah, I love that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm going for, is just that really schizophrenic style of, you know, this is definitely somebody who grew up in the 80s and is, you know, you're going to know where I'm coming from when you hear it because it sounds crazy, but I think it's going to work in the end. I just got to execute it. And that's
Yeah.
going to be the issue. Is the biggest issue is finding the people who can play the different styles without having 400 people playing, because I got to have one guy who does punk and one guy who does metal and one guy who does country and one guy who does this. And if, I'm trying to find people who are like me that can play an instrument and play multiple styles.
Right.
So that's the biggest thing. Excuse me. So where do people find more information about this? This thing is happening when? This is March. This is coming up soon, right?
Yeah. It's soon, like in 2.5 weeks.
Ooh. So we're right at the end on March 17th and March 19th. Rock N Pod Expo, Nashville, Tennessee. So if you're going to be in Nashville that weekend by chance, there are some tickets still available.
Yep.
Where do they go to get tickets?
We also will be announcing soon a pay-per-view thing we're gonna do. We're gonna have some of the activity like on the main stage. It'll be recorded that day, but like within 24 hours, you can prepay, and then within 24 hours, you can watch all of it. So
that would be awesome.
Yeah,
I would
it's a company.
definitely go for that.
A company called Meat Hook Live that is coming out to do that for us.
Nice. Where do they go to get all the information? Is it just the Nashville Rock and Pod?
Yeah, or you can just do rockandpod.com and it'll take you right there. Yep.
Awesome. So for those of you that have kind of, I guess I led into this really abruptly. Rock and Pod is huge. I mean, you got just so much going on. You've got the Rock N Pod Expo, you got the Keel Fest, you got the Comic and Pop Culture Con. You got the Sunday movies screening, the Sunday comedy and Eric Martin thing. You need to get. I don't know if you've had Steve Whiteman do comedy, but you need to get him
Oh,
to
we'd
do
love to
comedy.
get him. Yeah,
He
I'm a
is
huge. I've heard he's a
fall
pretty
down
funny
funny.
guy.
He is
Yeah,
fall down funny, dude. He is. He's probably the funniest guy in rock and roll. Like, as far as the ones I've interacted with, he is by far the funniest one you'll ever. Um, he's funny without even trying to be funny. That's
right.
the thing with Steve. Like, Steve's funny without. He doesn't try to be funny like some people. Like, he just is. Like, he's just that kind of Jim Carrey type of guy. Um,
Gotcha.
Definitely check all this out. Chris, thank you for allowing me to do this and to have you
Oh, it
on
was
here.
fun.
And hopefully we can kind of get together again and do a podcast together without this, and just kind of talk about
Absolutely.
music in general, and kind of discuss our favorite records and different things and whatnot, man. Because
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. And yeah, part of I told Dave, I was like, one thing you've done is you turned me on to all these other great shows that I hadn't listened to yet. So yeah, I've been making dates with people in the future when, hey, let's get back on when this is over, and then where I can be a little more relaxed and we can just talk music for like an hour or so.
yeah, like mine's been kind of crazy and sporadic because of everything that's going on, and I'm almost at a point. I think I'm going to just completely relaunch everything because I just have the video part right now. I don't have the audio part, and I kind of want to put that back up as well and get it in a central site so it's all clean again.
Mhm.
Um, so because I know right now people are probably like, you don't post every week, you only post every 2 weeks, or you'll do two in 1 week and then you'll skip a week. And I'm like,
Oh, I we've been that way too, and I've been doing it
yeah, I
12
was like,
years.
I'm
Don't feel
sorry,
bad.
but like I just went
Life
through
gets in the way, man.
yeah, like I just went through a horrific divorce and I got sole custody of my son. So I'm a single dad of a 11-year-old kid now.
Wow, then that
And
kid's more important.
like I'm learning how after 13 years to do all this stuff by myself that I never had to do before, like organize clothes and keep them organized so I actually know where his underwear and socks are, because I never did that. Like I mean, I hate to admit that, but I never took part in that. Like it was like, okay, I did this and she did this, and
Right.
it's more work than it seems to keep an 11-year-old kid's clothes organized in a way that they're not like, hey, get dressed for school. I don't have any clean clothes.
Yeah.
Why do you not have any clean clothes? You didn't wash them. Well, you didn't tell me they were dirty. So you have this constant battle, but
Right.
um, and then getting old, like just getting old shit ain't for the weak. Like
I hear that.
but thank you for doing this, man.
Thank you. It
Um
was fun.
and Again, everyone check this out. This is Rock N Pod, happening March 17th through March 19th, 2023. Keep an eye on the websites that we mentioned. And man, I wish you great success with this.
Thank you.
Tell Ron and everyone I said hello. And we'll wrap this up. Um, this is the Noize Report. I'm the Music God. We'll be back next week. Same crazy place with same crazy ideas.